place. One of those patriotic Americans is Congressman Greg Steube, Republican of Florida, the freedom state in America. Take a listen to see what I mean.
Today I rise in opposition to H.R. 8. This legislation claims to be a solution to gun violence, yet does nothing to actually solve the real problems that contribute to this crisis. As it stands now, this legislation does nothing to make our schools, churches, or communities safer. In fact, it only infringes on the constitutionally guaranteed Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens, something I cannot support.
Well, Congressman Greg Steube is a fellow freedom fighter. Congressman, appreciate it. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I got to ask this. You're in Congress, and you've probably seen this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Democrats say, I want a zillion dollars. And you say, no, we don't have a zillion dollars. I'll give you $1 billion. And they say, fine, we'll settle on $1 trillion. And then Republicans say, yeah, actually, $1 trillion sounds a lot better than a zillion, so we'll give you the $1 trillion. And then they just keep coming back to the well. Am I wrong?
Well, you're exactly right, and I don't disagree with anything that you said in your monologue. I agree with everything that you stated before I came on here, and it just happened with this socialized social bill. Bernie Sanders started at $6 trillion, and they viewed it a compromise at $3.5 trillion, and then they viewed it as even more compromise at $1.5 trillion. That's on top of the $11 trillion that we spent the last 18 months, on top of the $4.3 trillion to fund the budget, on top of the $1.9 trillion that we just spent at the beginning of this year on Biden's COVID bill. And so you're exactly right. They started $6 trillion, then $3.5 trillion. Again, these are trillions of dollars that we don't need on social spending programs, that we don't need in our country right now, that we can't afford, that we continue to add things onto our deficit every single day, onto our debt, where we have no plan to pay for it. We're not balancing our budget. You and I couldn't run our own checkbooks and our own businesses that way, or we'd be bankrupt. But the federal government continues to do it, and you're exactly right. We are coming to a year, we're coming into 2022, where we have the chance to take the House. And I earnestly plead with the leaders of the Republican Party and the leaders that are going to get elected to the House to not compromise our conservative principles, to not compromise our American ideals, and to stand firm. And you're exactly right. We're gonna try to bring a few Democrats along. That's not what they're doing. They're trying to shove through a liberal progressive ideology. They're only going to compromise when they can't get the Joe Manchins of the world to come along with all their progressive ideals.
Yeah, and I was talking a little bit earlier about like the massive, they create this tragedy. Okay, COVID. We've just found out that a lot of the people who tested positive for COVID over the last 2 years may have actually tested positive for the flu, and the CDC is rescinding their authorization that the PCR test is as accurate as they originally claimed it to be. So they created this crisis. I mean, they really laid in heavy on here: mandates, vaccines, masks, shutdowns. You second-class citizens if you don't do exactly what they say. And people look around and they're just like willingly, look, Congressman, I'm on the city council of my hometown. I put forward a bill that says, you know what, guys? The choice to mask your child in school is going to be up to you and your doctor and not the bureaucrats. It failed 141 to 43. 141 people just gave their rights away.
And we have seen it in the last 2 years, and you're right, it started with 15 days to slow the spread, 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Yet here we are 2 years later, where vaccines are being forced not only on you, but you just heard Fauci talking about if you want to travel to see your grandma who lives in another state, you're going to have to get vaccinated to get on a plane. You're going to have
kids in New York City.
Yeah, you're going to have to get vaccinated if you work for a business that has more than 100 employees, which thankfully the courts are coming down on the Constitution. And there are members like myself who will continue to fight for our constitutional rights, will continue to fight against all of these unconstitutional mandates. But you are exactly right in the sense that Americans have just kind of said, oh, well, whatever, if I have to wear a mask to go in the store, if I have to wear a mask to go on a plane, which, oh, by the way, a cloth mask does absolutely nothing to stop the spread of a virus, and there is science to prove that. But we continue to see our rights eroded to the point where we're all going, oh, well, that's not the big deal to force vaccines on people. Now we're not far off where they're going to start forcing our children to be vaccinated for something that they don't need to be vaccinated for.
Right. Well, I got about 30 seconds left, but there's a lot of the moderate Republicans. And I say a lot of Republicans are actually Democrats. No Democrats are even close to Republicans at this point. The one thing, a lot of people will come to you and say, hey, Congressman Greg Steube, you're not compromising on the Second Amendment. We need good order and discipline to save lives. And I tell these people, the heck with you. I don't need to compromise. It's my right. I don't have to compromise. What do you say to the people who tell you to compromise your own rights away?
You know, it's funny you say that, because when I first got elected to Congress 2 cycles ago, there was a Democrat that came to me in Florida, and I won't name names.
What does it rhyme with?
She said, where can we work together on the Second Amendment to, have reasonable gun control laws? And I said, we shouldn't have reasonable gun control laws. We have a Second Amendment to protect ourselves and our family and protect ourselves against a tyrannical government. And the moment you start to erode away your rights as it relates to the Second Amendment, you're starting to erode away our freedoms. And I would never support that. And she was flabbergasted that I wouldn't come to some compromise on some, in her mind, reasonable gun control. Well, what about, universal background checks? I said, we have background checks. You have to get a background check to get a firearm as we stand here today. So why would we want to pass more legislation to inhibit law-abiding citizens' rights to defend themselves?
Yeah, I agree. I have hundreds of guns. I can't imagine. I don't think I've ever bought a single one without a background check. Weird how that works. Congressman Greg Steube, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you fighting for the great state of Florida and our nation. Thank you.